Jamie Dimon has decided to go after progressive presidential candidates, and he's fear-mongering about socialism while also demonstrating that he's really unsure of what socialism really is. And so this calls for one of my favorite segments, When Rich Men Cry.
I care. That's it.
So Jamie Dimon didn't name Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders. In fact, he tried to prevent naming anyone when he went on this anti-progressive rant. But while speaking to CNBC, he did talk about how he believes democratic socialism is a huge threat in America.
You poll young people about the world, the word capitalism, and they may be on the socialist side of things.
I don't think they understand. Honestly, I don't think people understand what socialism is. Socialism is when the government controls companies. There is no example where the government controls companies, they do it well, and they don't start to use it for votes, satisfying people. They don't even want competition, because if we're two government companies, why have competition? They do it for jobs and votes. They have bad allocation of capital. Most state-owned enterprises don't do a particularly good job. Just take a look around the world, and they become corrupt over time. That does not mean that capitalism is perfect. It doesn't mean that every public company is perfect. No, there are flaws.
So he's worried about corruption, because in a great, strong, capitalistic country like the United States, we don't have any issues with corruption. Right, so look, a lot of times there's fear-mongering about Karl Marx. People are referred to as Marxist because there's this notion that Marx's work focused on government control, right? But his work actually did not talk about the government controlling companies or the means of production. Socialism is a framework, right? And it can be applied in different ways. So a worker co-op where the employees actually own the company, own the means of production, that can be considered a socialist way to run the company. But that's exactly the type of way someone like Jamie Dimon would not want a company to be run. He likes the top-down approach. I mean, he's the CEO of a predatory bank. And we'll get into how predatory it is in just a minute. But John, I wanted to give you an opportunity.
Yeah, look, he either is incredibly ignorant about what socialism is and how the term is being used in modern American political discourse, or more likely he's being incredibly dishonest about it. He speaks about it the same exact way you would expect Sean Hannity or Tucker Carlson or whoever to talk about it. It has nothing to do with government control. That's not what any politician, Democratic, Socialist, or otherwise is actually talking about. Thankfully, I think that more and more voters all the time are understanding that.
Right.
I think the reason that favorability of the term socialism is becoming far higher is because they're not listening to, first of all, they're not listening to Jamie Dimon, but they're not listening to anyone at Davos, basically. Maybe Greta, that's about it. And that's not what it means. That's not why people are rallying around politicians like Bernie Sanders, AOC, others like that. It's just nonsense.
Exactly. Well, here's the second part of what Jamie Dimon had to say.
Do you think that Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren are socialists in the construct that you talked about it, or in the construct of this idea of a democratic socialist, which is something that may feel more European in some ways?
I don't want to talk about any particular people, but if you're talking about governments controlling corporations, that's socialism. You can do it in a small way or you can do it in a big way. The small way is to put a commissar on your board. Remember the old Russian commissars? That's all. They're just going to sit in the room, or do it through regulatory or stuff like that. The other way is that they actually own the company, and that's why if you look at all these other countries, they start to take over the oil companies and then the steel companies, then the utility companies,
and the banks,
and the banks, and then the banks start making loans not to a good company, not because they're properly allocating capital to its highest and best use, but to keep that factory open, the bridge to nowhere, to make sure the mayor doesn't lose jobs in his town. And once you do that, you will have an eroding society.
So he's concerned about an eroding society, the type of society that would privatize utility companies, it would get rid of privatized utility companies. Luckily, in states like California, where we have privatized utility companies, they use all of their profits to fatten their bank accounts, but don't actually use any of that money to upgrade their equipment, and that has led to devastating fires in the state of California. But that doesn't erode society, does it, Jamie Dimon? One other thing I wanted to note is that Bernie Sanders is best when he's aggressive and when he speaks the truth, right? And here's an example of it. He responded to Jamie Dimon with a tweet saying, "That's funny, Jamie Dimon seemed fine with corporate socialism when his bank got a $416 billion bailout from American taxpayers."
Yeah. So basically what this is he's a very rich, powerful person who has surrounded himself with other rich people. They get together for this sort of thing and they're all rich together. And he's afraid that hypothetically, the overwhelming headlock that American corporations have had on the US government for longer than we've been alive might be challenged in some small way.
Right.
Not in the BS way that he's describing, like full control of corporations by the government, a commissar in the room, nothing like that. It's not being proposed, but he has to come up with this apocalyptic scenario to scare the American people into not asking for any reform whatsoever, so that we can maintain the status quo, which is that they have overwhelmed our politicians, bought them off, paid for campaigns to get people in who are favorable to them. And so you're not gonna have a commissar in every corporate boardroom, but you are gonna have a bunch of lobbyists in the halls of Congress at all times. They're gonna have their representatives. And so what he wants to do is he wants to scare you about some idea of what the future may be like, so that you'll forget how bad things are right now, how slanted things have been.
And understand, while he fearmongers about government rule, the scary government is gonna control your life, the system that we're living under right now is corporate rule because of the legalized bribery that's allowed. That makes someone like Jamie Dimon incredibly powerful, and he is unwilling to let go of that power. That's really what motivates and fuels the commentary that you see here. And so when you have a candidate like Bernie Sanders arguing that healthcare is a human right, first of all, he's correct. And you need to understand that in other developed countries, every other developed country, it not only is considered a human right, it's decommodified. In America, it's a commodity. Okay, healthcare should not be functioning under a profit model, but that's exactly what we have here in the United States, and Americans are literally dying as a result of that, and it's gross. So let's talk a little bit about Jamie Dimon, who he is as a person, and how he has specifically helped to erode American society. He's got into a lot of trouble because of his bank's predatory practices, and back in 2013, there was, at the time, a record settlement that JP Morgan Chase agreed to pay. We have some info on that, take a look.
JP Morgan's $153 million settlement with the SEC.
All of this resulting from the SEC's investigation and resulting charges into the way JP Morgan marketed its complex mortgage securities transactions just as the housing market was starting to plummet. Now, under this settlement, all of the investors harmed will receive all of their money back. That is what is significant. The SEC alleged that the time that some of these deals closed back in May 2007, what they're saying is investors did not know that there was a large hedge fund betting against the long position investors were taking. There was an email in which a JP Morgan employee noted, quote, "We all know Magnistar wants to print as many deals as possible before everything completely falls apart."
Nation's biggest bank is facing a $13 billion fine this morning for its role in the mortgage meltdown. JP Morgan Chase negotiated the tentative settlement on civil charges with the Justice Department. The deal does not end a criminal probe, and it could set a new standard in cracking down on bank behavior.
What Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan executives would have us believe is that mostly this was a result of what they bought in Bear Stearns in March of 2008 and then Washington Mutual in the fall of 2008. What I'm hearing actually is that the majority of this may actually be from JP Morgan Chase's own behavior itself. So they've been trying to have people believe that, hey, we were just trying to help the government out. We were just trying to help the American people out by buying Bear Stearns, buying Washington Mutual, and this is the reward that we get, a $13 billion penalty. But in fact, I think more than people think was actually in the JP Morgan business line itself.
So of that $13 billion settlement that JP Morgan Chase agreed to pay, $9 billion went to investors, and $4 billion went to homeowners who were screwed over by these predatory bank practices, right? So just to give you a sense of where the priorities lie in this wonderful country that apparently isn't eroding society at all. Under a system that's not eroding society, according to Jamie Dimon. And then one other thing I wanted to note is that there's a lot of talk about how we need to think of our veterans, we need to support our troops. They put their lives on the line to protect the freedoms in this country. Apparently, Jamie Dimon's bank didn't think so when they targeted members of our military when it came to their shady practices. Take a look.
A mortgage scandal forced a major bank to apologize for targeting, even threatening, members of the U.S. military while they were on active duty. JP Chase today admitted overcharging 4,500 service members and foreclosing on 18 of them.
It was a rare apology from one of the big banks to service members targeted, rates hiked, and in some cases foreclosed upon.
I'd like to express to the men and women serving our country Chase's deepest regret over the mistakes we made. I commit to you that we will get this right.
And listening to that apology today, Captain Jonathan Rolls and his wife. Rolls, a U.S. Marine, endured a 5-year battle with the bank. Overcharges, threats of foreclosure, even though his wife was paying on time.
So Jamie Dimon, tell me again how democratic socialism would erode society. Because he's done a good job in eroding society here in the US. And so he'd be an expert on it, right?
Yeah, if you're gonna launch into a career of criminal behavior, definitely get into an area where the worst case scenario for you is that everybody gets caught, but no humans have committed any crimes. Lots of crimes are committed, but not by people. And so some company will use other people's money to pay fines, but that's it, there's no consequences. And then like your name isn't even sullied. You'll still get invited to Davos and get to speak on nice panels and all that. It's a pretty good gig.
The great thing is, these are opportunities to not only debunk the disinformation that we see on some media outlets regurgitated by bad faith, dishonest actors like Jamie Dimon. It also gives us an opportunity to look into who these people are and what they represent and how they have played a role in leading the country to where we are today, where the wage gap, the income gap is ever widening, where working class people are struggling to put food on the table for their kids. This is a good opportunity to educate others about what's really going on, and doing so in a calm, rational, logical way. That's what we need to do. We have the facts on our side, we have the people on our side, and I'm sick of them lying to us on television every single day in order to maintain this system that's only working out for a small group of people at the very top. We need to fight back with the facts because we have them.
Yeah, and really fast, like the criminality that was exposed around the Great Recession, it makes it really obvious what they were doing. But the thing is, you don't even need that. If the system is working the way they want it to work, what do we have? We have a recession every 10 years, effectively.
Right.
People's savings are wiped out, pensions are wiped out, all of that. Regular people, not the people at the top, they always get golden parachutes, they're always going to be fine. That happens every 10 years. Every 40 to 50 years, it's way worse, and far more damage is done to the economy. But they will always bounce back because they control the people that determine who's gonna be bailed out. It'll always happen. It was really obvious, the criminality the last time around, but this is the way it's been going decade after decade after decade. And along the way, they've locked it in where effectively wage growth and inflation are always gonna be right around each other. And so no matter how much productivity gains American workers experience, they're never gonna actually benefit in any way from it. That's when the system's working. That's when the system doesn't crash. It's set up in a way that you will literally never benefit no matter how hard you work.
Exactly, and I want to read one quick comment from one of our members because I think this is a great point and it's accurately stated. So Dave Peter says, I don't understand why people aren't saying this, even TYT. Democratic socialism is the reverse of state socialism. It puts the power in the hands of the employees, the workers, and away from the government. And I think that's a really good point because the way that it's being portrayed in the media is that it's this dictatorial top-down approach. But the way that people like Bernie Sanders have argued their policies or in favor of their policies is to empower the people to be in charge of things that, first of all, shouldn't be commodified in the first place, things like Medicare or healthcare, I should say. So it's a really good point. Thank you for making it. And if you'd like to become a member of the show, go to tyt.com/join. Members help to keep our show afloat. We couldn't do it without them.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.